Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this special meeting of the Bennington Select Board. We are in the multi-purpose room on the third floor of the Bennington Firehouse. Today is Monday, June 2nd. My name is Tom Haley. I have the honor of chairing this board, and I will ask my fellow board members to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Nancy White.
Good evening, I'm Jackie Matz.
Yes, good evening, Clark Adams.
Ed Woods here.
We also have with us Josh Boucher. I'm told we are broadcast live on YouTube and being recorded for the other platforms. And Stu Hurd, who is our town manager, and more we'll hear from later. First thing before we get underway tonight, staff has informed us that we need to add an executive session after tonight's meeting. So could I please have a motion to add executive session following this meeting?
I move to add an executive session.
Second.
So, Tom, don't you
Yep.
have a reason?
Yes, I'm sorry. For litigation and contracts. I'm sorry. Thank you for the reminder.
I move to add executive session for litigation and contracts.
All right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we are unanimous. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to discuss the disbursement of funds to the Ben High project, and Dan Monks will be leading the discussion.
Is anyone taking minutes?
Stuart, did you hear that question? Mary asked if anybody's taking
I
minutes.
raised my hand.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay, sorry. I didn't hear a
Multitasking.
response.
That's what I do.
All right, hello, everyone. Sorry that everyone has to come out for another special meeting. I know you guys are having a lot of them lately, but we do have important action to take this evening. So while we're here this evening, just a little background. On May 20th of 2025, Ben High Cornerstone acquired title to the Ben High property in connection with the project's financing structure and compliance requirements. Immediately following, on May 21st of 2025, Hale Resources commenced construction as MLB Construction Services LLC began environmental remediation on the property. These are significant milestones for the Ben High project, and it's really great to see work beginning at that site. The closing of the financing of the project is the next step in this very complicated effort. Weekly closing calls with funders of the project continue, and all parties are working toward a financial closing as soon as possible. Pursuant to the terms of the development agreement approved by the Select Board in January of 2025, Hale Resources has requested the town to disperse $1.6 million towards this project to continue construction. This is a portion of the municipal funds committed to the project. No money already committed to the project in the approved development agreement is included in this request. So this is all money that was contemplated for the project. It's not an additional request, and it was all money contemplated in the development agreement. Given the ownership and financing structure of the project, the funds will be dispersed as a forgivable loan that will be repaid at the financial closing and reinvested in the project. Approval of a motion to authorize the town manager to disperse the municipal funds as requested in this memorandum would accomplish that disbursement of funds. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Should we make a motion for the purposes of discussion, Tom?
I will hear that motion after we've had any questions from the public.
Okay.
As we've been doing at the last few meetings. So does the public have any questions at this time? Ned?
I have a question about the purchase and lease agreement with,
Okay, just to stop you short there, purchase and lease agreement is no longer in effect. The property has transferred to a new owner. So we no longer are leasing the property. Just-
okay.
And we also need to
Right.
keep on the topic of the meeting, so I just want to caution us that way too, Ned.
But in the purchase and lease agreement, there was an agreement from the previous owner to fix up the property, repair the windows, do work on the floor. There was a list, and it added.
Yeah, that was amended. If you look at
Added up to
the,
about $400,000.
yeah, if you look at the amendments that later occurred, that was no longer part of the project.
Which amendment was that?
One of
I'm
the-
looking at the sixth
It
amendment.
was probably in the first, second, or third amendments. I don't have them in front of me. That's not the subject of the meeting tonight, but.
Yeah, regardless, we're not discussing the
That's no longer that was no longer part of the deal. Since Hale Resources was purchasing it, the town no longer.
So the town has given up that $400,000?
No, the town is not.
Which was owed?
Hale Resources is purchasing the property, not the town.
And what about the lease agreement that was meant to be adjusted because the improvements were not made? The lease term, the terms of the lease, we agreed would be adjusted if if the property improvements were not made.
You talking about the purchase price? That was, once it was
I'm
determined.
talking about the lease and purchase agreement that went through 6 amendments.
So, Ned, the town no longer had responsibility for purchasing that property. It was Hale Resources. They negotiated all of those amendments because they would be spending the money to purchase the property. It is not town money that's purchasing the property.
So is that posted on the town website?
All the amendments, I believe, are.
The amendments are, yes,
Yeah.
but the fact that the amendments are no longer valid, is that posted?
It has nothing to do with that they're no longer valid, they're just no longer relevant.
Do you have any questions regarding the transfer of the funds that we're discussing?
Well, I have questions about the funds that are going to the property. Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm asking.
So you're asking about a purchase? Well, this is not funds for the purchase of the property. These funds are not for the purchase of the property, if you want clarification regarding that.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I was just wondering how the site is being paid. Is it like a requisition under the supervision of an architect engineer, and it's being approved, or as far as requisition of payments? How is the payment issued?
I'm not sure.
We didn't buy the property.
No, but I'm
Right,
saying
right.
as far as the funds being dispersed, I mean, I'm just wondering if there's an architect or an engineer that has control over the project to make sure that payments are properly distributed? I mean, being
There is a project manager on site,
Yeah,
from what
and
I
Hale
understand.
Resources is the one
And that's
paying
Hale's,
those
yeah.
funds, and they do have an architect and engineers, and that's.
Okay, I mean, we do have.
But that's not the town's, we're not overseeing the
Right, but the
construction.
town has funds involved in it, so
Yeah.
I just want to see that they're all protected properly, you know?
The amount of oversight on this project is astronomical. There are 30 different funders, all with their own requirements.
Okay.
And a very, very qualified construction manager on site, so we know that we're in good hands here.
Okay, that was my question.
Excuse me, just for the record, could I have your name, please?
That's Robert Moore from Bennington.
Thank you.
So it's not an inappropriate question, it's just that the town's not, if this is not a town oversight project, if we were responsible for the contractors, et cetera, then yes, it would be a requisition approved by an architect, et cetera, but Hale Resources will be going through those processes to prove to their funders that they've met those requirements.
No, you can hear it, can't you? That's good. So, you people, Mike Bethel from Bennington, you people couldn't have gotten any more confusing from the conception of this project till now. So now, is Hale going to be, or is Hale the owner of this project?
Benhigh Cornerstone, Inc. is the owner of the project, which
And
is
who is that?
it's an entity created specifically to purchase and develop this property.
Is Hale part of that, or is he the owner of that?
I don't know exactly the ownership structure. The development agreement contemplated that this particular entity would be owning it, and Hale would be responsible for the redevelopment.
You're telling me that we're putting $3.5 million?
Can I call the question, please, Chair? This is not related. We got to move on here. Thank you.
Well, there's actually no motion on the floor at the moment.
Point of
But-
order. There's a question on the floor by a resident or a person from the community. I would think there should be able to be an simple answer.
You can answer. Shannon can answer that.
Well, I can try. So, If everyone's familiar with the Putnam project, it's a very similar structure for the new market tax structure. So
I'm not talking about that.
well, I'm just using it as an explanation.
I know.
So in this case, it's Benhigh Cornerstone is the entity. That's a nonprofit
That's
entity.
not what we were told.
You asked who owns it. So
Right.
they own it, and then they have a 99-year lease with Hale Resources.
When did that come about?
That's part of that agreement.
When?
This is not an
Anyway,
agreement with
I'm
the
just trying to
town.
explain the structure, but it's a similar structure to
You're
the
asking to
Putnam.
reinvest or switch our ARPA money.
No,
No.
Mike, you're confused
Anyway.
there.
You straighten me out
Mike,
then.
this is the same money that this board approved for the fit-up of the town space in the Benhigh project, and we are discussing tonight advancing that money.
To who?
Hale
And
Resources.
High Cornerstone.
Benhigh Cornerstone.
And Benhigh Cornerstone is owned by Hale or not owned by Hale?
Shannon, did you answer that?
It's a set-
I don't know that that's relevant.
It is relevant.
Here's why that entity matters. Okay, the nonprofit structure, it's just, like I said, the Bennington County Industrial Corporation is the nonprofit that owns the Putnam project, okay? But it is all of that redevelopment, and the management of it is M&S Development out of Brattleboro. It's essentially the exact same structure here, but that entity is Benhigh Cornerstone. The property manager is Hale Resources. They're the developer and the property manager.
Well, through all of the discussions over the many years, how come Cornerstone whatever was never in front of our community explaining anything? We had a 36-year-old or whatever his age is explaining it. Correct or am I not correct? When was Cornerstone in front of this board?
They were certainly part of a public meeting, at least on Zoom. But the
Cornerstone?
point, the Cornerstone is an entity that's created for the structure.
Right, God is an entity, I understand that.
So this is just the way that a new market tax structure deal works. That's just the way that it works. So I'm just explaining that they're a nonprofit entity. From the very beginning, Hale Resources was always going to be the developer and the property manager.
Was going to be the owner.
Well, now they are, it's basically like a lease-to-own agreement. That's what it is.
This public was sold on the idea of Hale owning that property, and we were going to lease. I mean, it's changed so many different times.
Mike, Hale Resources needed to create an entity
That wasn't told to the public.
Actually, it was discussed as part of the development.
many
agreement.
times.
Yeah. It is a complicated structure, but it was clear in the development agreement what was going to happen.
No
Anything
offense,
else?
folks. This is pitiful what you put on this community.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? Okay, seeing none, I'll hear the motion, please.
I move that we disperse the funds as requested by Benhigh Cornerstone.
I second the motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any questions or comments from the board?
There's a big difference between the Putnam block and the Benhigh. We are not spending $3 million in town ARPA money on the Putnam block. Our town taxpayers are not subsidizing the Putnam block for 4 years.
Interrupting her because this was already approved by this board. We are not discussing whether or not.
We are talking about
We are not
dispersing money.
discussing whether or not we should invest. This board already made that decision.
The point has been made comparing the Benhigh to the Putnam block. There is no comparison. Our town taxpayers will be subsidizing the Benhigh project for the next 40 years. Clearly, our town is a major player. Going forward, who is the town official that will be accountable to answer questions from the public, the citizens on this board, and the media for how we're tied to the Benhigh? Who will that town official be?
It'll be management staff as needed.
So if somebody has a question here at a meeting, who do they direct it to?
I would suggest they direct it to the manager's office.
And as far as being accountable for the money that our taxpayers will be paying every year, Who will be the person watching over that process for the next 10 years?
That will be the manager's office and our finance director.
And nobody can be more specific as to who actually owns the Ben High now?
Well, I think the purpose...
It's been pretty exactly stated.
If I could, Tom, I think the purpose that Shannon used in trying to give an example is, no, this is not the same as the Putnam Block, but the Putnam Block, because of all of the variety of tax credits that are being invested into this property, you need to create a nonprofit entity that is able to receive those funds and utilize them. In the Putnam Block's case, that was Bennington County Industrial Corporation. In our case, it's, is it Evernorth? Ben High Cornerstone, I'm sorry. And ultimately, it will be Zach Hale that will be operating the facility, doing the renovations. Is that correct?
So our citizens are not going to be told who actually owns the Ben High?
When,
I'm sorry?
Cornerstone Inc. owns the property. That is the entity
But who
that
are
owns
the
the
groups
property.
that make up Cornerstone? It's a very easy question.
The primary Cornerstone Housing, the successor to Shires.
I'm sorry?
Cornerstone Housing, the successor to Shires, they merged with the Rutland organization.
Yes, it's that merger group. Nancy,
So it's
that
not them,
gave
it's a
grant to that
subsidiary
merger.
of them. Yep.
But this doesn't make sense. We learned here last summer that two groups in Rutland were taking over Shires Housing in Bennington County. I thought Shires had
Nancy,
no...
this was all agreed to and understood in the development agreement. I don't, if folks don't want this, don't agree with this, this decision has already been made. We don't have the opportunity to change that. The development agreement authorizes this to proceed.
Well, I'm just going by
We had
what we
these
were told
discussions
last
already.
summer.
Nothing's changed.
Yeah, everything's the same as since last
I
summer.
believe the Ben High has been on one select board agenda in the past 9 or 10 months. So
Well,
clearly, I've tried for over 2 years for more meetings so citizens would actually understand, and unfortunately, I couldn't get the board to do that.
every time there was something to report, they came before this board. If there was nothing to report, there was no point in them coming. Does anyone else have questions?
Is the audience allowed anymore or no?
No, we're done.
Yeah, I just had a question. And again,
In a mayor system.
you know, as anyone in this room or out there watching knows, this has been a protracted, convoluted process. And just for my own sake, hearing the Shires step in here, that was news to me that they were part of the process. Not that it's going to change anything, but again, as I said, everything I've encountered throughout the town, there's just a lot of people who are very confused and don't understand the process. And that in itself can be a problem, even if there aren't problems, that in itself in the mind of so many people in this town, this is a problem, but.
If I can just follow that and say that
Excuse me, I believe I have the floor.
how many attorneys did it take to
I'll see you
understand?
guys later.
Goodbye.
This has to stop when it's cutting you off. I never cut you off, I never cut anyone off, I don't appreciate it.
Good night, Clark.
I'm sorry.
I have one more thing to add. When the select board voted to start this process, Shires Housing thought they were going to be our partner. A few months into it, Shires said no, they were not going to participate. The Hales were brought on. I truly do not understand why I'm hearing Shires Housing tonight.
We were informed of the merger between Shires and Cornerstone some time ago, and they were always part of the discussion.
Yeah, in the past, we've discussed that Ben High Cornerstone would be the purchaser of this property, and that was the entity that was the main driver of it.
Well, I
Yes.
understood, I thought they were going to be working with the Hales, but I always thought the Hales were going to own it. Does Cornerstone
So
own?
they will control it, essentially. But there has to be a nonprofit entity in order for this process to work. I apologize if folks are having difficulty. This is a ridiculously complicated project. It's the only way that these projects get done, is through new markets, historic preservation, low-income housing. They all require an incredibly complicated structure that takes multiple attorneys, hours and hours to create and make sure that they comply with all the rules, regulations, and laws. So for me to try to explain something that is an extremely complicated financial structure, it's not possible.
Okay.
Not in a short period of time like this. I mean, if anybody wants to sit down with Zach and go over the structure, I'm sure he'd be happy to. But this was all discussed and presented as part of the development agreement that this board agreed to and signed back in January. So just to be clear, there's been absolutely no change in how we were proceeding with this project.
Does Cornerstone own everything, the addition, the gym, and the basement too? In addition to the main building?
They own the property, yes.
They own everything?
Yes,
Yes?
yes.
All right, I'm going to call the vote, please. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No?
And I guess one abstention. The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Now, we have need of an executive session to discuss litigation, excuse me, contracts. So I'll bid you all a good evening. We will not be making a decision coming out, Josh. Thank you.
I move that we
Tom, are
enter
you going to
executive
announce
session.
our meeting tomorrow night?
We will be back here tomorrow evening at 5 o'clock.